So as we've had this debate, a funny analogy has come about that my co-founder Eric likes to say. And he says, blockchains are grocery stores that have sports teams with banks attached. And it sounds bizarre, but the more I think about it, I think it perfectly encapsulates the ecosystems that we're all interacting with. Sit at this intersection of an interesting financial, technical, and social innovation. And big emphasis really on the social aspect there. But people are tribal by nature, and that may lead really to a bifurcation of many sort of crypto ecosystems.
Hey everyone, I hope you're having a wonderful week so far. Here with the latest episode of the Inside Crypto Show, interviews and discussions with regular people just like yourselves. Today we are joined by Jim Myers, the CTO and founder of Flipside Crypto. Before Flipside, Jim developed the core technology that took products from 0 to 1 at companies like Mylestone, Pluralsight, and 𝕁𝕚𝕚𝕤𝕃. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. But before we get into all of this cool stuff that Flipside does, there's a lot of stuff you guys would remember Tom and YouTube shorts from there. But we could talk about Jim's background because it's a very interesting background, and I'm sure he's got stories to tell us. Jim, thank you so much for making time. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Kriyan. I'm a CTO, co-founder at Flipside. I started Flipside in 2017 with my co-founders Dave Balter and Eric Stone. And really what we've built is a data-powered growth and community platform for blockchain ecosystems. At this point, my co-founders and I have been working together for over 10 years, and we started a couple companies together. We always working at the intersection of data and product. And I first really got interested and pulled into crypto around the summer of 2015. I remember that time Ethereum was launching, and I come from a background in economics, and in microeconomics, you spend a lot of time in sort of laboratory settings building these contrived experiments to elicit certain human behavior. And I saw crypto and smart contracts as essentially enabling these experiments on a massive global scale. And I think about this sort of almost as programmable human behavior. And so a lot of these concepts that really got me excited and pulled me in really underlie the platform that Flipside has built today as we think about how we reward and incentivize users to get to certain outcomes to help the ecosystems that we're in support them and grow them.
Very cool, very interesting. One of the first questions that comes to mind, Jim, is like working with your co-founders and especially doing the things you guys have done and working so close together over the last 10 years, right? Like, how does that work out, being together all the time, spending time spitballing off each other? Do you guys still get along like you used to 10 years ago? Are there occasional arguments? And like, how does that relationship work?
No, that's a great question. And, the longer that you work together, the longer, this probably sounds obvious, but you figure out where people excel, how we can push each other. In some ways, it's like music. It's like playing, say, in a band, and everyone plays a role and plays a part and plays off of each other. And so after 10 years of doing that, you really start to figure out how to effectively really get the best out of each other to build something amazing together. I think that's a large part of the reason we've had the success that we've had, and it's knowing how to push each other to get to the best outcomes. And of course, that does involve conflict at times, because that conflict, I think, in many ways is honest sort of feedback, transparent feedback, and conflict is required to get to the best outcomes. So we're constantly pushing each other.
That's wonderful, because I mean, having spoken to so many people over the last 2 years, and I would say people who work closely together for a long time, sometimes there tends to be friction, but it seems like you guys have overcome that and come to a really good place where you, like you said, push each other and do really well together.
Yeah, and the one other thing I would also say, building a company in general is hard. Building a company in crypto is probably 10 times harder. There's so many ups and downs to it, especially the past 18 months, and this market has been incredibly tough. And so having those co-founders there almost as a support system where you can constantly pull each other up, because really when you're building a company, it's about perseverance and getting back up when things aren't working out and keep on pushing through. And so having that support system there with you is really makes a major difference.
Definitely true. I can't agree with that more. You opened it up. Let's get into today talking about Flipside, talking about some of the things you guys have released recently. But before we do, I want to remind everyone, anything you or I say is not financial legal advice. Please do your own research, __, do your own research. Jim, one of the cool things you guys released that I love, it's pinned at the top of your Twitter account. The link to this will be down in the show notes on the podcast, on the YouTube video as well, is you release a crypto economy snapshot. It's really well formatted. You guys on the podcast would know that I love like especially beautiful things, like, and you guys really put it out well together. And this goes into what you talked about, right? The last 18 months of crypto have been difficult, bear markets, things are looking positive, perhaps. And I was wondering, you being at Flipside, like, what's your take on the change? Is it really good news? Is it temporary good news? Like, how are you guys feeling?
We've been through at Flipside, I think, 3 different cycles at this point, and I think this has certainly been the most difficult cycle. It's been the most protracted and deepest. So I am cautiously optimistic, I would say. I'm trying to temper expectations. I think if a number of things align properly, we can continue to see the resurgence that we have seen. And there's a lot of great fundamentals that support where the market is headed right now, especially the development that's been happening and a lot of the activity that we've seen on chain, a lot of this activity that's been mentioned in the report. But I think also we all know that crypto is also driven by macro narratives as well. And so I am well aware of that. And so despite all the building that's occurring, I think there are also larger influences at play. So optimistic about the outcome of some of these. I think Bitcoin ETF is a very big narrative, and we'll see how that kind of plays out in early Q1.
Fantastic. And I definitely agree with what you said. One of the things that report highlighted was, and we've also posted about this on our own social accounts, is that people are still using Binance despite CZ being under house arrest in the US and changing CEOs. And I've seen spatters of stories about, oh my God, Binance is expecting this to happen. And again, emphasize these are rumors. If you're a Binance user, I'm still a Binance user here in Taiwan. It's unfortunately the most accessible exchange for people here. But you guys pointed this out as well in your report, and I was wondering what's your take on that?
Yeah, so I think first I would say I think Binance Smart Chain and Binance have this really great sort of unique synergy in the ecosystem. In many ways, it could be what Base and Coinbase aspire to, but this synergy makes this sort of on-off ramp between the centralized money source and then getting into the decentralized world really simple. And I think if you think about outside of the US and a lot of other countries where crypto might have found product market fit already for payments, the Binance app is used for peer-to-peer transfers without needing to, say, touch the blockchain. And if they want to use the Binance Smart Chain at the same time, it's there, it's available, and it's really easy to move back and forth. And so I think that sort of synergy is what has allowed BSC and Binance to really grow. And there's also some other drivers there. I think PancakeSwap on the Binance Smart Chain side is one of the dominant DEX NFT ICO platforms on BSC. I think DeFi llama estimates that 45% of the dominance on BSC is attributed to PancakeSwap.
Very cool. And I totally agree with that. When I got into Binance, PancakeSwap and BSC was like my second step after that. So I totally agree with you. I really want to talk about Flipside. There's some other questions about this report, and we'll probably come back to it if we have time. But Flipside is so interesting. I wish I had more time to play around with it and spend more time with it. But I know when this was arranged, and David was really cool about helping us arranging this interview, and I was like, hey guys, we're talking to 𝕬𝕚𝕚𝕤 from Flipside. Have a look at the website. What questions do you guys have? And I know one of the biggest questions was like, Flipside looks like prettier than people familiar with 21𝕉 and Dune Analytics would be. And I was wondering, was that a design decision? Are there like steps to make it look even more prettier than some beyond Dune? There's Messari, there's Token Terminal, which is just black and white, so that's probably a horrible example. But like, why does Flipside exist the way it does today?
I mentioned a few things from the past that sort of drive how we build product. And we've always built companies, this intersection of product and data, making data usable, making data accessible, the feel of the tools, the products that people are spending dozens of hours, sometimes hundreds of hours on our platform to build out analysis. And so we want that experience to be as friction-free as possible. And we really obsess over just very little details. If you're working in the UI and you're writing a query, having to switch out pages to do certain things just results in those small amounts of time add up. And we really obsess on the product side over this, and design is a really big element of this. And I think a lot of what is the culmination of a lot of sort of our experience building products for a long time now. I think one of the things we also think about is that crypto data can be incredibly daunting. It's incredibly complex. There's all different sort of rabbit holes that you can go down in this space. And we have found over time that a lot of people set out to build something, and they're faced with this sort of problem before the problem issue, meaning they can't tackle the challenge that they're after because they're getting bogged down in data or something related to data in this space. We believe that one of the biggest sort of growth opportunities for us and for these ecosystems is bringing more traditional sort of Web2 developers and analysts in. And so we have systematically thought about how would we do that. And so one of the first things that we did there, in addition to all the product and tooling stuff we do, is we've built out this world-class team of Web2 data analysts and data engineers. And we really wanted to bring in people that would be able to design data to match the expectations of those that would be coming from this sort of these different various traditional worlds and backgrounds into this space. We've gotten a lot of feedback from users once they come in. Oh, wow, the data just clicks the way you've organized it. And that's because we use things like star schemas and easy fact dim tables. And so this makes it so that you only have to learn, most times, you only have to learn our schemas once. And then you can reuse your learnings across all these different blockchain ecosystems. And that's very intentional and a bit different, I think, than how some others have structured data. The second thing there is just you need a really welcoming community. I think it's easy sometimes to feel out of place or dumb amidst some of the crypto cool kid Twitter groups. And we invested heavily in a community team that would be there to onboard folks that might not yet have the knowledge of Web3, but have some of these data skills that they can bring in. And we've seen incredible success over the past 2 years with deploying this strategy. And some of the largest influencers now in the Web3 sort of analytics space grew up on the Flipside platform. So we're going to keep investing there. And like I said, keep investing in what are the different ways that we can reduce friction and make it easier to onboard those folks.
Perfect. That's awesome. And all the things you said just really click with me. Jim, who is Flipside for, right? So somebody watching this, they're like, okay, I know June, I know Messari, I know Token Terminal, I know Flipside. That's it. I know, but I've never gone there. I've never used it. Are these the people you want to come to Flipside, or are you maybe saying, okay, maybe do a little bit more research on your own, get into crypto more, and then Flipside should be your next destination? Or is Flipside the destination you hope that every sort of crypto person at every level comes to immediately or at some point in the future?
Yeah, so the data we curate, I would say, and the tools that we build to access this data are broadly intended for analysts, developers, or product builders. Data, I would say, is so vast, and so especially in this space. And so there's lots of companies that are building amazing niche products and data sets. And many of these too, they've partnered with Flipside and are actually on our platform. And so we intend to bring as much data as possible together, both stuff that we build our own. We're happy to also partner with others to bring data in. But we believe that we have some of the best tools in the ecosystem to support the usage of this data. Now, I feel like that's a very zoomed in view of Flipside and what we do. If we zoom out a bit, our mission as a company is to help blockchain ecosystems succeed. We sometimes joke at Flipside that we're a growth platform disguised as a data analytics business. Our core customer segment, right? So we give away this platform largely for free. There's some at scale companies and products being built on Flipside, and so we have to charge given the nature of how they use our data. But largely it's for free, and that's because our core customer segment are blockchain foundations. And they pay us to deliver pretty big growth outcomes for them. Our data platform, the community we've grown around it, is a tool that enables that growth in these ecosystems. We lead with data because as open as blockchain ecosystems are, the data is ironically really hard to access. And so I mentioned this before, but teams really often spend a lot of time before building what they set out to build on data-related problems. We've found that when you open up data, all sorts of magical things become possible in an ecosystem. Developers can enter and they can build products and build companies. Community analysts can illuminate what's happening and drive accurate, powerful narratives. Product leaders can make strategic decisions. Funds can decide where to invest capital. So we're really hyper-focused on developing that platform, data and tools for product developers, analysts, because their success really ties to the overall ecosystem's success, and it forms the foundation of what can be built.
Nice, and that makes sense. And building upon that, Jim, I know we had a question from someone who pops in every now and then onto Telegram and listens to episodes, and he was like, okay, I've checked out Flipside. I'm an analyst. I use these tools ABC. I want to use Flipside. but I don't know what the difference is there for me. And he was like, could you ask Jim this question? What is the key differentiator for analysts, because he's an analyst, to come to Flipside and to use this system and tools and the schema you talked about? And you've already mentioned some differentiators, but if there was something that's top of mind that would be like, hey, this is it, and automatically it would be like convincing people left, right, and center.
And I know this isn't maybe as satisfying as one big thing, but it is really lots of little things. I think about this sometimes like a Figma as to an Adobe before Adobe acquired Figma. What makes Figma great? If you're a designer, it's all the little things that they've imagined for you so that when you're going to do your work, everything is just there and easy and ready to use. You're not reaching for all these things. So we try to anticipate exactly what you'll need to do your work properly. And we obsess over this. The tiniest details we obsess over. And so from a product standpoint and data standpoint, we're trying to build this super easy to use platform. The one thing though I would say is really unique though about us is the way in which we operate is, right, I mentioned this, our primary customer are blockchain foundations. What that means is we have a direct line to the developers at all of these foundations. And so whenever there is an issue, this is particularly true for a lot of our larger customers, they'll come to us and say, hey, I noticed on X blockchain, this data seems a bit off. Yeah, okay, that does seem a bit off. It looks like there's an issue with the latest client they released. We get in contact with engineers there and we fix and we solve that, and working with the engineers there, putting to solve these sort of issues. So we sort of always have this direct line to the source of truth and the creators of these things that does obviously allows us to fix those issues, but also informs how we develop the data. We typically are bringing these teams in as we're building things out to really understand how they intended certain things to be used and structured. And that reflects, I think, in the accuracy and the sort of integrity of the data that we've built.
That's awesome. And the small things actually do make a difference. And I think most people would know, and you can see my background over there, power supply, AMD CPU, right? I think it was like, why would you build your own computer, right? And I'm like, it's the small things, right? It's putting it all together, making the individual choices, and it all adds up together. The small things all add up to this wonderful, upgradable, awesome machine. And I think what you mentioned with Flipside is just the same thing, right? All these small things add up to this wonderful, big, wholesome thing that you can use now and in the future. And it just, like you said, like designing for usage and so that makes everyone easier is, I think that's a winning strategy without a doubt. And as usual, I've thrown the questions out the window unintentionally. Let me tell you, I had some good questions today, but there's just so much to talk about at the moment, and there's this stuff going on Twitter, and there's this regular news. But another question we had from the audience, which literally just came in 10 minutes ago, and I usually have a cutoff for this, but this was so interesting. I was like, okay. This guy was like, okay, he's used, again, platforms A, B, C, D. This is cool. This is interesting. I have to know some programming. At some point, like you mentioned, Flipside definitely seems to be like about bigger entities, bigger institutions, and that's cool. And they're all, of course, for individual analysts as well. Will they be a sort of like retail-facing site, like a guy who says John Jones from Worcester, Massachusetts, where I used to live 20 years ago, right? He goes and he says, hey, I want to look up some data, but no, I can't understand any of this. I just want to ask ChatGPT or Google's Bard or whatever AI solution, say, hey, tell me about the last 100 transactions on the Bitcoin blockchain. Where are they from? Who do they go to? That sort of stuff. Is that in the cards? And again, if this is the secret source for something in the future, we don't have to talk about it. We can cut out the segment completely. If not, I'll let you take it after that.
Yeah, no, we have no secrets here around AI stuff. I have been, it's funny that you mentioned though, real quick, this idea of asking a dashboard, because I had this moment, I was playing around with ChatGPT app on my phone, and they have this was maybe a couple months ago, they released the voice enable, the ability to ask a question with your voice. And I was sitting at my house and I'm just playing around with it. And I was like, what if I said, hey, what's the latest news from Flipside crypto on what's happening in the space? And would that work? And it went to Flipside and it pulled up whatever the latest dashboards were and it started summarizing them. And it was like, would you like me to continue with the next several dashboards? And so I thought, that was amazing. This possibility already exists, and it's just really about discoverability. But B, this also highlights, I think, something that we've thought about a lot at Flipside, which is the a company like OpenAI has the power to release lots of new features that are intention can diminish work that maybe you've invested significantly in. I was talking to one of our VCs about this a few weeks ago. They've seen a lot of companies that start on something and they spend months and months investing resources, fine-tuning a model, only for that sort of IP or what they've built to become irrelevant, maybe by something that's been released by OpenAI or somebody else. Very short timeframes here. And so I think unless AI is sort of part of your core IP, you have to be very careful about how much resources you invest versus, say, leveraging a third-party service that can help you do it, really to enable some sort of metric on your platform or make the experience for users better. So we don't have, I would say, there isn't a piece of functionality that's coming, say, tomorrow. We've prototyped various things and we're in the process of watching closely. I think the way we think about it is less about will we release AI, some sort of AI feature, and more, hey, we're always on a path of thinking about how we reduce friction for our users when they're building, reduce the amount of time they're spending or consuming the data. And so are there features that we could release that would be in line with that belief system? And so that's going to dictate, I think, what you'll see in the upcoming year around features that we release that may or may not involve AI.
That is awesome. And I love the answer. Very exciting, very interesting as well. And I'll follow up on that, right? So we know they did ChatGPT Turbo, which allows you to make your own custom GPTs. Potentially, could users off Flipside say, hey, I'm getting all this data from Flipside, put it into a GPT and then make their own model? Is that acceptable?
They could. Some users have done just that. This was way before this release and more primitive versions of this, but used our API to try to build this question answer system over top of our data. Users should certainly, we'd be happy if users wanted to do that. And ourselves, we've experimented with the same sort of features internally and seen some pretty incredible results. And so this is a trade-off I always think about of like when companies are like, should I fine-tune a model and spend lots of time on infrastructure, or should I be leveraging, say, OpenAI? And if it comes back to if it's not your core IP and it's really enabling, say, reducing friction for users, and you should try to get to that path as quickly as possible. And OpenAI has some great features that make that possible.
Let's zoom out a bit, Jim, and look at Flipside as a whole. We've talked about this, and I hate talking about other companies especially when you're interviewing someone. So I'm not going to do this, but looking at where you are in the market in terms of data analytics platforms and what you're doing, right? Are you happy with where you are? Are you happy with your market segment of being analysts, being bigger entities like you mentioned, blockchain foundations? Do you want to be more public like some other companies are definitely super public, or do you have other plans looking forward into the next 1 to 2 years?
Yeah. Everything that we do, I would say, is our North Star. You can think about is how do we help the ecosystems that we are a part of succeed? And that doesn't just mean a foundation, which is a customer, but that's all the constituents of those ecosystems. So that underlies a lot of our belief system. And I talk about belief system a lot because when we're talking about making tough decisions or strategic decisions, we always go back to that. And that really guides how we have built this company. And we have a lot of analysts on the platform. And I look at these communities that we're a part of and say, what part can Flipside play to grow the platform to help those ecosystems? And that benefits everybody, everyone that's involved in this space. And you'll see in the coming years and next year, this expansion into 2 areas that we've started to focus on. Developers, I think, are a very important segment. We have a lot of developers on our platform, not as many as, say, the analysts that we have, but they're trying to use the system to do certain things that maybe it's not currently best designed to do. And it's great to see users trying to do certain things, but what we'd like to do is build out more developer-focused feature sets. And so you'll see a lot of products geared towards tools that match certain types of developer patterns. So that's a segment that will grow. The second piece I would say is we have this earn program that's been very powerful in delivering insights or delivering growth in the ecosystems that we work within. Historically, we've had this product that we called scored apps. Scored apps have been white labeled. A lot of these blockchains will have these scored apps. Flipside built those, our algorithms power those. And the main idea behind the scored apps is using the power of our data to determine who high potential users are in ecosystems, scoring them, and then allowing them to participate in certain types of growth campaigns. Some people refer to these as quests. And we've seen incredible results, both in bringing new people into ecosystems and growing the ecosystem. And so we've built out a product taking all of our learnings from these various, what I think about as satellite apps, and combining them together into sort of more of a robust quest platform that will be released as part of our earned product next year. So yeah, these are two big areas that I think we'll see growth in, and we'll keep investing in the platform to help these ecosystems reach their full potential.
Great. And you read my mind. I saw this flow thing when I was preparing for the podcast. I was like, this looks so cool. I looked at it again today. I'm like, oh my God, I should have asked the question. You just, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I will include that as well in the show notes. Jim, this is going to air next week, right? So this will be the last episode of the year for our show, the last episode to end the season. So now with YouTube video content, right, we have to ask this question, and I apologize that it's so cliche, right? Any predictions you have, and again, I want to emphasize these are not price predictions, right? We don't talk about price on this show, like any good podcast. But predictions for 2024, it doesn't have to be about crypto. Anything top of your mind. It can be about Flipside, can be about crypto, can be about technology, data. Floor is yours. Predictions for next year, 2024.
Not so much a prediction, but I think an interesting way to think about things. My co-founder Eric and I, we have this ongoing debate about a multi-chain world versus winner-take-all world. And this is, I think, especially relevant with the explosion of L2s recently and people building, say, off the OP stack. And L2s seem to be a pretty big narrative. So as we've had this debate, a funny analogy has come about that my co-founder Eric likes to say. And he says, blockchains are grocery stores that have sports teams with banks attached. And it sounds bizarre, but the more I think about it, I think it perfectly encapsulates the ecosystems that we're all interacting with. Sit at this intersection of an interesting financial, technical, and social innovation. And big emphasis really on the social aspect there, but people are tribal by nature, and that may lead really to a bifurcation of many sort of crypto ecosystems. So blockchains are grocery stores that have sports teams with banks attached.
I love that. That's going to be next week's first TikTok and YouTube short, because it's so short, but it encompasses so much, and that's perfect. Jim, you've said a lot about Flipside. We've talked so much about the company and the culture, and I love that because we rarely get to talk about that on a podcast like this. Last question for today, and then you can get on with your morning. Is there anything about Flipside that you wanted to say that I haven't asked you about, or that you'd like to say? Final thoughts about Flipside or crypto? The floor is yours once again.
The last thing I'll say about Flipside, really I'll leave you with here, is I think 2024 is poised to be a really interesting year for crypto. And I think if you're just getting started really in the space, we've built out a really robust platform and continuing to invest in that platform. And so if you haven't given Flipside crypto a try yet, I encourage you to come onto the platform and check it out. We have a really friendly community team that can help get you started. And we're investing significantly this year, both continuing to invest in our data, but more and more on the tooling side as well. So check out Flipside, and thanks again for having me on.
My pleasure. Thank you for joining. It has been a fantastic discussion. I'll reiterate what Jim said. You guys know Tom's been on this podcast multiple times, talking about data and all the wonderful things that it allows us to understand blockchain through that data. So definitely check out Flipside. All the socials will be down in the show notes, right? Will be in the podcast as well. Jim, you're on LinkedIn and Twitter, I believe. Is there a best place for people to follow you? Is it more LinkedIn or more Twitter, or are you equally on both?
Equally on both. So feel free to follow me on either. And if you'd like to connect, happy to chat about Flipside and our platform.
Perfect. Thank you again for doing this, especially given how busy it is over there in the morning. And hopefully we can connect in a year or so. I'd love to see how 2024 turned out for you. And thanks again for ending off 2023, you being an amazing guest to have and talking about the future. It's awesome. I'm so happy we got to have you on and to round off the year like this. Take care, and we'll see you again next year.
Thank you so much.